Hello, Guitar Smarts fans. Before you check out this podcast, I want to make you aware of a cool new place where you can interact with other Guitar Smarts listeners. It's a Facebook group called the Guitar Geek Hangout. That's where we hang out and talk about all things guitar. So, if you like the Guitar Smarts podcast, come and chat with Kiran and myself over in the Guitar Geek Hangout on Facebook. Maybe check out some pre-podcast clips and even get involved in asking and answering lots of questions from the other page dwellers. Hope to see you there. Episode number 4, welcome back. This is part 2 of our Desert Island deliberation. Now, on the last show we talked about our guitar choices, and this week we're going to go on to talk about pedals, amps, and also that wildcard choice that we have to make. Subscribe to this podcast on your favourite podcast app so you never miss a show. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/guitarsmarts, and come and give us a like on Instagram at @guitar_smarts. Anyway, let's get to it. Let's move on. Let's move on to pedals.
So, I've had to think about pedals in kind of context with the rig that I've chosen. So, in terms of pedals, and again, this is where I'm going to struggle with stuff that I don't already own. So, I've kept it fairly generic, but I would need a wah pedal for sure. I just love a wah pedal. Always have done. I'm a huge fan of the Jim Dunlop stuff. But they do a whole range of different wahs. So yeah, a wah pedal. I would want a looper as well if I'm on a desert island. I think that would be great. Yeah. I'd want some kind of reverb. If it's not in the amp, I'd want a delay and a chorus as well. And I think. I mean, I've written down some of the models and things of pedals that I would choose. But and then a drive pedal or distortion pedal. I love the rat pedals. I think they're great. MXR do a great distortion pedal called the Super Badass Distortion, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
for Marshall type tones, I think it does kind of JCM 800 sort of kind of Silver Jubilee style Marshall tones really well, especially if you've chosen like an American style amp. Which I have as my amp choice. I've chosen that kind of Fender style type amp. So yeah, that would be it. I mean, a wah, a looper, reverb, delay, chorus, and then something like a blues driver, and then an MXR Super Badass. That would be plenty. That'd be more than plenty.
Yeah, and I've gone for a similar kind of thing. Number one, TC Electronic Ditto looper, and then this is that's the only one that's an exception to the rule that I put in. Can't be something you own already. Well, I'm sorry. I've got to take a Ditto looper. I already have a Ditto looper, but I want to occasionally feel like I'm playing guitar with somebody else, right? Yeah. So Ditto loopers on there, some kind of boost pedal. I've put for a drive a Marshall Blues Breaker for that kind of classic thing. A chorus, same as you, a chorus pedal, reverb, because I'm not going to get a room sound on a desert island, am I? So I need some kind of... There's no natural echo out there, in the middle of the Pacific somewhere. So yeah, I put a TC Hall of Fame delay, an Arion chorus pedal. My favourite delay that I've ever owned, but I do not own now, so I escaped that caveat, is the Way Huge Aquapus delay, which is probably
a serious pedal. That's a serious piece of kit. It
is. I've owned one before. I think I got it cheap secondhand on eBay, and then again, my one in one out rule decided to sell it to get something else. But that was a fantastic, really fantastic delay pedal, and that's my pedal choices. So power and everything's obviously all assumed. Let's jump over for that quickly then and go to amps, because I'm interested to hear what you've thought about for an amplifier.
Well, for so many years, I was a Les Paul and Marshall guy, and then kind of in later years moved over to Strats and kind of Fender amps, and then using pedals to get more Marshall type tones if I needed it. But there is this now, again, this is where I look at something and know what it will deliver tonally, and I get really excited even before I've picked it up, and that is a Les Paul through a Tweed style amp rather than a Marshall. I think I love the Marshall Rock. tone.
Bonamassa, right?
But in terms of Les Paul through a tweed, and it's I just think the two of those things look great together.
They really do.
The way in which a Les Paul can really kind of drive that kind of Fender tweed amp and give some searing kind of lead, kind of woman tones and really growling blues tones is just phenomenal. But also just back up off all of the volume and the tone, and just, you can get some incredibly nuanced and beautifully dynamic kind of clean crunch tones. I think it's a very versatile setup. I've always loved the Marshall full-on, Silver Jubilee, JCM 800 types tones, and that's where it's at in terms of pure rock tone for me with the Les Paul. I've never been a huge fan of the Marshall clean tones. It's a pleasant clean tone, but it doesn't excel for me in the way that the Fender clean tones do. So I own a Fender Blues Deluxe with which I think I've spoken about before, is a brilliant amp, but I own that one, so I can't choose that. So one amp, and again, because this is on the wish list, is the Lazy J 20. So Lazy J make these incredible boutique amps. And they are based on that kind of Fender style amp, but everything has just been hand wired. Everything is just, that little bit more special. The speakers in it, Alnico magnet speakers. I've never had the pleasure of trying one, but I've listened to them a few times and seen other people playing them. And again, they've got that kind of tweed vibe going on. They do a 20 watt. I think it's actually an 18-watt version. That's all I'd need. Nothing too stupid in terms of headroom.
That's a really good choice.
That'd be great.
A few of my old mates who I haven't seen for a while, but proper gigging session guys, they swear by those amps for that particular sound. It's kind of like high fidelity Fender. I've heard them describe them as you take it's imagine. What a custom shop Fender Strat is to a normal Fender Strat. That's what the Lazy J is to the normal kind of Fender Tweed. It's like, not on steroids in terms of sound and, gain or loud or anything like that, just in terms of fidelity of sound. It's just something else. That's a really good choice.
Yeah, that's how I describe hearing it. When I heard it at a guitar show, this guy was just noodling on it, and I was just like, "That's a beautiful kind of Fender. Is it what is it? An old Tweed Twin or whatever?" And I looked at it. It was this little 10-watt Lazy J that was pummeling out this incredible volume, but just the tone of it was superb. So I'd love to buy one of those. I flitted between that and just keeping it simple with a Mark II Blues Junior with like a Jensen speaker upgrade in it or something, just because they're just a great amp again. But hey, this is Desert Island stuff, so let's blow the budget and let's get a Lazy J.
Santa's doing all the shipping.
Exactly.
How about you? I'm still conflicted on the amp thing, right? Because I've recently kind of got this orange Terra stamp thing on my board, which is it's a decent amp, but what it's introduced me to is the kind of innate orange sound, which is that it's a kind of a drive sound I've never really heard before, because it's very clearly a British sounding amp, with quite pushed mids, but it's more gainy than a Vox sound. It's a little bit more uneven than like a Marshall sound. It's got it's somewhere between a fuzz and a distortion kind of, when you've got it driven. And I really kind of love that sound. I've kind of really come to like it, playing it. And actually, one of the guitarists I've really been into over the last couple of years, a guy called Marcus King, who's, really young guy from, I think, Carolina in the US, who's just a ridiculous singer, fantastic guitarist. He's playing through these vintage orange stacks, and it just sounds fantastic. Really kind of gnarly sounding, biting lead guitar sound, but still, really smooth at the same time. So I actually kind of said, if I could have anything, I'd have like an original orange OR 100 watt head with a 4x12 card, right? So it's a bit like, it's entirely unnecessary and over the top for it. But I really love the sound of orange amps at the moment. But then I thought, that just wouldn't work at all with a Clapton Strat, and I've chosen a Clapton Strat. That'd sound terrible. So maybe actually, and then I started thinking, well, that Clapton Strat, the sound I love of that Clapton Strat from when I was, thinking about Clapton's guitar sound in the 80s, he was playing through a Soldano SLO 100 head.
SLO 100, yeah.
Exactly. And that's just been reissued over the last year, hasn't it? So Soldano started making the and a 30-watt version. Yeah. So now I'm kind of like thinking, maybe I'd go for the Soldano, but am I now just asking Santa for Eric Clapton's late 80s guitar rig?
Yes,
rather than actually, I am, aren't I?
And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. No, well, I embrace it.
Exactly, yeah, maybe I will embrace it, actually.
Embrace it, because there's nothing wrong with that. And I think, from recollection, I think the Soldanos originally were based on kind of modded Marshall heads anyway.
Yeah, I think you could be right.
Is it Mike Soldano? Is it Mike Soldano? I can't remember. Yeah. Didn't he used to work for Marshall or something like that? Or at least I think he went to America and started modding some of the Marshall 100-watt.
I think he was one of those guys, who was doing early mods.
JCM 800 heads and started modding them, and that's where the Soldano thing came around. So, I don't think that's a crazy choice. The SLO 100 or SLO 100 or however you pronounce it, I think is actually quite a gainy, almost Marshall-y type driven amp, but obviously with the way Clapton used it, got different tones out of it. So I think it's quite a versatile piece of kit.
It's it is a heavy amp, definitely.
Yeah.
You see a lot of the,
So when you said the orange, I didn't think that was an unusual choice. I would have thought it was an unusual choice with the Clapton Strat until I'd seen a combo of a Strat and an orange 4x12 and was blown away by the combination. And that I've seen this band a few times now, and it's Alan Nemo from King, who has the most beautiful Strat tones, very Clapton inspired in his playing sometimes. I mean, he's just a phenomenal blues guitarist, I think, but I think he covers
singer as well. Got to be said.
I'm a huge fan of his. He's absolutely brilliant. Singer. I've been following them for many years and seen them play in. I used to go and watch them at the Half Moon in Putney, in these little venues and things, and Blues on the Farm down near Chichester, where I've seen them a number of times. But now I think they're getting pretty big actually on the blues scene, and they're doing a lot bigger venues and touring a lot further. Yeah. But he's an incredible player, and his live Strat sound for me, he's played Les Pauls and things with the Nemo brothers, and he does play Les Pauls live as well in his King setup, but. The sound of his Strat through the orange amps that he was using when I was watching him live once, I was just like, that tone is just phenomenal. So I think the Strat through the orange amp could work as well.
With that entirely.
It could work as well. Yeah. I've seen it work.
I couldn't agree more. And you said that he's Alan Nemo's really coming up. I think he was on the last. Joe Bonamassa does this Keeping the Blues Alive. Cruise every year. Alan Nemo, King, his band was on the last one, I think, in the Mediterranean.
I came,
which is really, that's really awesome.
I came seconds away to buying 2 tickets for that last. I was going on it. I was on it. It was $2,500 for a basic cabin. But that included, I think, your food and some basic drinks and stuff like that. But it was $2,500 a cabin for a week on board a ship with Bonamassa and King and watching all these gigs every night. And I was just like, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Fuck it. I'm doing it. And honestly, I was there. I was watching the ticket sales. I kept going to and fro with it for a few days. And I backed out right at the last minute only because we wanted to go on holiday somewhere else with the family, and I kind of thought I'll go next year. And then COVID hit. Yeah. So next time I'm going on it, mate. I'm doing it.
You got to do it. I'm really sorry to interrupt this super interesting conversation between Kiran and myself, but if you've made it this far, maybe you should consider subscribing to this podcast. That way you won't miss any future episodes. And while you're at it, come and join us on our social media channels too. They're all linked in the description. Come and give us a like, thumbs up, or whatever it is you do these days. Anyway, back to the conversation. Let's move on to albums. So I said 3 albums, right? I don't know if you thought about this one yet, but I actually made a list. This. Yeah, I know, and I've 3 albums is hard. 5 might have been a better number, but I'm going to say my 3, and I reckon you can guess. I reckon you're not going to be surprised by 2 of them.
Right, so I reckon that you. Do you want me to guess? I won't tell you what the exact album is. I'm betting somewhere on there is a Clapton album.
Of course, yes.
Right. I have thoughts as to what the others 2 might be, but I'm not going to ruin it. I'm going to write down in front of me now, and I promise you I won't change it, but I'll write down the other 2 artists that I think might be featured in your... Okay, right, I finished writing it down. All
right.
But I know there's going to be Clapton in there somewhere.
Album number 1, From the Cradle, Eric Clapton.
Yeah.
It's like the album that got me playing guitar. It's the first album that really made me think that I loved music. And still love that album now. Still, I could still listen to that front to back every day without ever getting tired of it. Number 2 is Continuum, John Mayer.
Yeah.
I
wrote John Mayer down. I didn't know which album you'd go for, but I wrote John Mayer down as one of mine.
For a number of reasons, not just because, a huge John Mayer fan, but that actually, I first listened to that in about 2007. I think it was a 2006 album. But in 2007, I probably hadn't really played guitar at all for a couple of years. And it was that album that got me back into playing guitar. So in a way, that's that album had the same effect on me as From the Cradle did, but later in my life kind of thing. And the last one is Abbey Road by the Beatles, which I think is the perfect. It's one of the only perfect albums of just perfect songs. And the last, if you've ever listened to Abbey Road, that last kind of 6-7 songs, which is basically just a medley of short songs, is just it's just a euphoric thing to listen to. Just amazing. That last medley of songs is, and those things. I reckon after a week I'd want to listen to other albums anyway. But
as is such as life. But
those are the 3 that I would say are my favourite albums of all time.
They are great. They are really great choices. I was a huge Clapton fan through my dad's music taste, and but my dad had all the kind of 80s Clapton stuff when he was almost kind of in his kind of rock era, rock pop era, if I can say that. I don't know when From the Cradle came out. It may have been in the 80s.
It was 94.
94, right. But my dad didn't own that album. So I'd grown up listening to a lot of the kind of Cream Clapton stuff, and I hadn't heard of any of the kind of Blues Breakers stuff. And it was all of the kind of Journeyman era and all his more kind of pop rock kind of stuff. And I'm obviously phenomenal guitarist. And I was going through a massive Stevie Ray kind of period in my kind of late teenage years, and I was waxing lyrical to another friend of mine who's a guitar player, just going, "This, Stevie Ray is the epitome of where the blues is at, in terms of what I like about blues guitar." And he'd said, yeah, but Stevie's great, but he said he's not a patch on Clapton. And I was like, Clapton, he's amazing. He's a brilliant guitarist, but he can't play the blues like Stevie Ray. I mean, he can play the blues, but he can't play like Stevie Ray. And my friend said, have you ever heard From the Cradle? And I was like, no. And so he went, do yourself a favour. And he lent it to me. He put it in my hand and he said, go home tonight and listen to this and then tell me what you think. And I called him up at like 1 a.m. I'd been listening to it all night, and I was like, I am such a fool I am so, because he was a bit old. He was like about 10 years older than me. He was more seasoned than me. I was like a 16, 17-year-old kid who knew nothing really about anything apart from Stevie Ray was the greatest blues guitar player of all time. And this just schooled me. I was like, my God, Clapton as a blues guitarist is just out of this world.
Yeah, and that was his best time for me. A lot of people say it was the 60s, but for me, that early 90s, well, not the early 90s, but post Unplugged, really, it was just that album, From the Cradle. That was, and it took me a long time. It was probably 15, 20 years after really listening to that I realised that it was his tribute album to his heroes. And that, I mean, it was probably 20 years before I listened to Muddy Waters' Hoochie Coochie Man, that original recording, and you listen to that and you go, oh my God, Clapton was literally trying to just do that. He wasn't just trying to do the song his way. He was trying to do it the Muddy way kind of thing. And that's what I love about that album again is, actually, although it's a really great album in terms of Clapton's musicianship and that band, you realise what he was trying to do was pay as big a tribute as he could to his heroes, and doing songs that were, as that album is to me, those albums are to Clapton, his heroes recordings. And he was trying, I think, he spent, if you read his autobiography, the record company were getting really quite concerned with him because he'd basically booked out Olympic Studios in London for over a year, full time. I mean, you're talking probably hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of studio time, because he was so into the detail of recording that album and getting the sound right in his head in terms of replicating what, the feel of those original albums, that he was just living in that studio for, I think, over a year, trying to record that album. You listen to that album, it's a couple of hours worth of blues jams, and it was a year's, a year of work, day in, day out for him. It's quite incredible, actually, that album. And, it only makes me enjoy it more when I listen to it.
I think it's an incredible choice, Matt. If anyone that hasn't heard From the Cradle, it is just one of the most definitive blues albums of all time by one of the most incredible guitarists of all time. Mm-hmm. And he's a real blues historian. As you say, if you read his autobiography, you realise that he was quite unusual for a Caucasian guy growing up in the heart of Surrey in the home counties, to be at a very young age just really interested in all of this kind of music. Excuse me, from America, this kind of black roots blues music and the whole Robert Johnson thing, and he really got into it. It kind of helped him, discover himself in a way that, everything else around him didn't make sense in many ways. And he never lost that, really. He of course, he developed his own style of playing and his own kind of, iconic status, but he never detracted from what he really loved, which is the original roots of these blues songs and who made them. And so, you can hear it when you go back and listen to these guys. You can go, I've heard Clapton do that, or I've heard Clapton's take on that, and I thought it was Clapton, right? Because again, he's doing us, this generation and the subsequent generations that listen to him, that service of opening up and facilitating. This is where it came from, guys. This is what influenced me, and it's an incredible album.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good choice.
What are your choices, dude?
Okay. Do you want to guess any of them? Could you guess any of them? Or artists?
I don't know. I'm thinking maybe a Guns N' Roses album is in there somewhere. Stevie Ray, possibly. Go on.
You know me well. You know me well. So, top of the list is Appetite by Guns N' Roses. Appetite for Destruction. For me, it is the seminal rock album of kind of my youth, and one of the albums that just inspired me to play guitar. For me, it is just an evergreen album. I think I can't listen to Sweet Child of Mine anymore, or Paradise City, or any of those tracks, because I've just listened to them too much. And yet every time they come on, I still listen to them with incredible passion and just love the kind of the songs. So it's an evergreen album. I just can't get tired of it. I don't listen to it that often now, but every time it comes on or I do listen to it, for me it's evocative of why I play guitar, the guitar's tone that I love for rock, and it's my youth. It's got memories associated with it. So yeah, it's a great album. I think just a great rock album.
Excellent choice. I agree entirely. I think it's an absolutely stunning rock album. Really great.
So then I went for. I might have cheated with the next one.
Is it possible to cheat choosing another one?
Maybe. Tell me what you think.
Don't tell me it's the greatest hits.
Well, it kind of is. See,
that's okay.
That's how you cheat. Well, it's not a greatest hits, but to me, it is one of the best. Just leaves me speechless. Live albums, and it's John Mayer's "Where the Light Is."
Yeah.
So it is kind of a greatest hits, but it's a greatest hits of three different parts, right? There's the acoustic set that he does on his own first and foremost, which is just a tour de force of solo acoustic guitar playing and singing. It's just that in itself.
Neon a lot, just ridiculous.
That in itself would make for a worthy choice in this. Yeah. Then he does up a notch to the kind of trio with Steve Jordan and Pino Palladino just playing some great 3-piece bluesy kind of jams and great tunes, and then if that wasn't enough, after a brief interlude we get the full kind of John Mayer band and greatest hits, and I think that, just watching that and listening to that, and not only because of the kind of journey you go on with the songs from his career, but also just hearing those different setups of bands and things, I think is just an incredible album.
I completely agree. I mean, that I can think of moments in that whole live album that I've listened to, not just songs I've listened to over and over, but moments like you mentioned, like Pino Palladino in "Good Love Is on the Way." If you listen to that again, and after the guitar solo, when it goes into the chorus, between the singing parts of the chorus, Pino does this bass licks like do 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 do, and it's just there's been times where I've listened to that song and I've just looped that over and over again because like Pino's bass playing and the fills he does between singing, it's just like nothing else. It's just so musical. They sound so much bigger than just three people playing guitar, bass, and drums. Yes, and then, like you say, the full band thing when they do Gravity, that solo at the end of Gravity that's one of my favourite guitar solos of all time. That's a lesson in how to kind of crescendo a song, and superb choice,
incredible, and a live album as well, which I do love. A good live album. It's well recorded. So for me that ticks my John Mayer box, and it also ticks musicianship and
ticks my John Mayer box.
Who doesn't want that? Let's be honest. This is it. This is the final choice I agonised over, and again my head kicked in and said, okay, you're going to put Stevie Ray in, you're going to put Clapton's Unplugged album in, Texas Flood or Clapton Unplugged or Queen, what's going in there, and it's agonising, right? And I settled on a really controversial one, but Michael Jackson's Thriller album.
Did not expect that. I really did not expect that, and that is such a brilliant choice. That's what an album.
Well, Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson in terms of the production. It was either that one or Off the Wall. But just listening to those two albums and the production and I hear something different every time in those tracks. And I've listened to that album since I was, 6-7 years old, and every time I pick up on something different, or a chord progression that piques my interest, or just the way in which they've built and layered a song. And I think it's just a great album, and There's some amazing songs on there, and it's very evocative of a period of my youth. And I think it's just a brilliant addition to those three. It gives a different mood and a different feel. So yeah, those are my three.
Choice.
Those are my three.
Awesome. Right. Let's go through this last one quickly. Right. The wild card. I don't know if you thought about this, but I reckon I'm going to surprise you with what my wild card is.
So tell everyone what the wild card is. What was your definition of the wild card?
Right. So this is okay. Let's jump back to the definition. So the wild card is something, anything at all, music related, such as an accessory or another instrument altogether. So just anything. It could, be creative at it, but it's got to be something music related. Okay. So mine is saxophone. Yeah. I'll tell you why. Because as I get older and I've played more guitar, the thing that I miss the most is the feeling of learning something for the first time. So I really miss how learning guitar made me feel when I was younger. Because you'd make such a progression week by week. When now it's all minimal returns, right? If I want to learn something on my guitar, and I'm not saying I know everything. I'm a long way from being, a very, very technically proficient guitarist. I'm decent, but there's a lot of things.
You're more than decent, and you're very far from being a novice guitarist, right? So
yes, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. But if I want to learn something new now, let's say I want to develop my speed, it would be a lot of work and take a lot of time, and I don't have at that time as much as well now. Whereas when I was, 16 years old, I feel like I could double my capacity to get better at it week by week. That's just the way things are, I guess. So actually, the reason I've said a saxophone, it could be anything. It could be a set of drums, really, harmonica. It doesn't matter. But the point is, it's something that I could take with me to teach myself how to play. But it gives me the opportunity to feel like that again, to feel like I can learn something and get better at it and teach myself to get better at it week by week. So if anything, all I'm saying, it's not the saxophone, it's the opportunity to have something to learn again is what I want.
That's interesting. That's really interesting.
So that's my choice.
And the saxophone is the thing for you.
The saxophone is the thing. I don't know why. I've got this thing in my head that I'll just spend eternity playing Careless Whisper on the beaches of some deserted island somewhere.
Nothing. Well, what better place to learn learn your reed technique than on a desert island where people can't hear you squeaking until you nailed it. But
exactly.
Good.
Exactly.
Very good. Very
so
good.
So that's my choice. Is that something? What had you thought about? Have you thought about anything for the wild card or?
I thought of many things. I started writing down every attractive female pop singer that I could think of. So I've got Ariana Grande, Katy Perry, I've got Shakira on the list, Rihanna featured a couple of times. It's a desert island, and you said wild card, and it's going to get lonely. But no, that would be again, of course, cheating. And I've probably asked Santa for too much, really, with a Lazy J and a Martin and all those other things. So so I didn't. I went to a similar place to you.
Really?
I chose a harmonica.
Seriously?
Yeah. Fantastic. I chose a harmonica for the same reason, because I've always loved the sound of a harmonica, and I think it's just effortlessly cool when I see these guys pull out harmonicas and just play along. I went to university with this French guy called Jean-Loup, just a beautifully wonderful human being with charisma oozing from every soul, and just like the coolest French dude ever. And he would always have, but not unbeknownst to everyone, he wowould always have a harmonica in his pocket. And
not one of those. One of those guys.
I realised what I just said. Yeah, in his jacket pocket.
Yeah,
and yeah, exactly. You think, oh God, no, not one of those guys. But he could really play, right? So we'd be at parties or we'd be jamming with guitars or whatever, and out would come his harmonica, and but he was so good on it
Yeah.
that it didn't fail to impress.
You know, the fact that you said that he was a French guy, though, you know, there's a comedian in my brain that's saying that no matter what you're playing, he's playing the theme tune to Hello Hello on this thing, you know.
That was a great theme tune. That was a great show. That was a great show.
And so you go for the harmonica, and you teach
I go for the harmonica. Teach
harmonica.
myself to play the harmonica, something different, something that I think I find very evocative, and I think conveys some great emotion and blues kind of feel to it. And yeah, because I want to learn something
That's
else.
cool. So when you're not rocking out on the Les Paul through the Lazy J, you're going to be sat there on the Larrivee, singing a bit of Bob Dylan.
That's it.
Fantastic. As the sun goes down.
Yeah, I'm gutted this isn't real. Yeah, you know, I've enjoyed this experience so much about thinking about this. Do you know what it is? It's like through COVID, my desire to pack a suitcase and go on holiday and sit on a beach and do all those finer things in life is obviously, like many of us, been dialed up to 11. So the process of preparing for this desert island trip has almost been like the process of going on holiday, where I've been writing a list of all the things I'm going to need. And now, as we get to the end of this podcast, I realise none of it is real and none of these things are going to happen, which gives me that same feeling that you have when you walk into a guitar shop and don't buy anything.
Basically, we've had an hour and 20 minutes of fun. Now we're going to be left with emptiness and sadness and melancholy.
I don't know. I might go back to the Lazy J website and
get your order in it. Go spend some money, dude.
'Tis the season. It is the season.
It's the season indeed.
It is the season.
Awesome. That was fun.
That was really good fun. Really good session, Matt. Thanks, mate. I enjoyed that a lot. All right,
fantastic. Buddy. Enjoyed it, buddy.
Yeah, and you. Speak to you soon.
I'll speak to you later, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Ta-da. Thanks so much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed this. This was such fun to do. And we're definitely going to set ourselves some more interesting challenges in the future, things to think about, things to consider. Maybe you can send us some ideas, ask us some questions. You can do that through our social media channels. They're linked in the description. Come and give us a like on those pages. Come and say hello. Give us a subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use. And we're available on all the big ones. And yeah, we'll speak to you soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye.